Here's the retirement lie almost everyone believes: that you need some giant number to stop working. 5 million, 8 million, 10 million, 15 million if you really want to feel safe. And almost nobody can tell you where that number came from. Not the internet guru who said it, not the financial advisor who implied it, not even you. It's usually just a feeling, a very expensive feeling. And that feeling is quietly costing people years of their lives. Because the gap between what retirement actually costs and what the retirement industry tells you it costs is not small, it's massive. For a lot of people, it's the difference between retiring in your 50s or working into your late 60s. The difference between using your strongest years for your own life or selling those years to chase a number that was never built from your actual life in the first place. So today, I want to show you something simple: how to calculate what retirement really costs, why Social Security matters way more than most people realize, why the industry has a built-in incentive to inflate your target number, and why a huge percentage of people who think they're not ready are actually already standing in the green zone. Let me give you the metaphor for this whole video. Picture a pressure gauge. At the far left is the red zone. That's financial fragility. One missed paycheck, one surprise bill, one broken transmission, and the whole system starts shaking. Then there's the green zone. That's where the machine runs properly. You sleep, you pay the bills, you absorb normal life without renegotiating your entire existence. And then there's the far right side of the gauge. Still green, but now you're just pumping in more pressure for no meaningful reason. The machine is not running better. Your life is not getting proportionally better. The pressure is going up. The quality of life barely moves. That is where a huge number of high savers live. And that is the central mistake in modern retirement planning. People think the goal is to keep pumping forever. It isn't. The goal is to know when the needle is already in the green and stop. Now, here's what's broken. Most people think the retirement problem is a math problem. It's only partly a math problem. The deeper problem is that the number in your head probably did not come from your spending, your Social Security estimate, your tax structure, or your actual lifestyle goals. It came from a fear-based ecosystem. An ecosystem where everything pushes in one direction. Bigger number, more buffer, more assets, more years of work, more anxiety, more money under management. And the incentives behind that system are not subtle. If someone charges a percentage of your assets every year, a bigger portfolio is better for them. If you retire later, accumulate longer, and keep a larger balance, they make more. That does not require evil intent. It barely even requires bad people. It just creates gravity. And gravity works whether anyone says the quiet part out loud or not. So let's start with the question almost nobody asks first. What do people actually spend? Not what they imagine they'll spend. Not what some article tells them they might spend. What they actually spend. Because this is where the story gets awkward. As wealth rises, spending rises too, but only to a point. Then it starts flattening out. That's the part almost nobody tells you. Yes, people with more money usually spend more. Better house, better travel, better version of ordinary life. But once life is already very comfortable, more wealth doesn't create proportionally more living. It mostly creates more financial surplus. That means a lot of people are chasing a retirement target based on fantasy spending rather than real spending. And fantasy spending is one of the fastest ways to waste years of your life. Let me make this concrete. Let's say you ask a couple what they need to retire comfortably. They say, probably $10 million. Okay, based on what? Most of the time, there is no answer. No 6-month spending audit. No retirement cash flow model. No tax estimate. No Social Security overlay. No withdrawal framework. Just a big round number that feels safe. And feels safe is one of the most dangerous phrases in personal finance. Because feelings scale endlessly. The number that feels safe at 2 million may become 4 million once you get there. Then 6, then 8. The goalpost moves because the number was never solving the real question. The real question is, what does your life actually cost? Not in theory, not in aspiration, in reality. That's the denominator for the whole problem. And until you know it, every retirement number is basically a guess wearing formal clothes. Now let's walk through the actual math. Take a married couple. They both worked full careers. At full retirement age, one gets $4,000 a month in Social Security. The other gets $2,000. That's $6,000 a month, or $72,000 a year, before they touch a single dollar of the portfolio. That matters. Because most people mentally treat Social Security like a side note. It isn't a side note. At common withdrawal rates, $72,000 a year from Social Security is equivalent to a very large chunk of portfolio the couple no longer needs to build. That one line changes the entire picture. Now let's say this couple wants a genuinely high-end retirement lifestyle. Not survival, not getting by. A very good life. Let's call it $15,000 a month after taxes. That's $180,000 a year net. Nice home, real travel, good cars, flexibility, comfort, room to breathe. To fund that after taxes, they may need something like $257,000 gross, depending on the tax picture. Social Security gives them $72,000. So now the portfolio only needs to generate the difference. And suddenly, the required portfolio is nowhere near the cartoonishly huge numbers people throw around online. That's the pattern. Once you use real spending and real Social Security, the gauge often moves into green far earlier than people expected. Now let's go a step further. What if you want to retire early? This is where people panic, because they assume early retirement means the number explodes. Sometimes it rises. It does not always explode. That depends on whether you structure it correctly. Here's the framework. Most people treat retirement as one giant pool of money. That is a mistake. Early retirement works much better when you split the problem into two tanks. Tank 1 is the bridge fund. Its job is simple: get you from retirement day to Social Security. That is a finite job. 10 years, maybe less. Tank 2 is the long-term fund. That money is for the rest of retirement after guaranteed income kicks in. These two tanks have different jobs, different time horizons, different withdrawal logic, different psychological roles. And once you split them, the math gets cleaner. The bridge fund is not supposed to last forever, so it does not need to be modeled like a forever portfolio. That is one of the biggest errors people make. They apply ultra-conservative, indefinite horizon logic to money that only has a 7-year or 10-year assignment. That mistake alone can add hundreds of thousands, sometimes much more, to the target number in their head, which translates into more years at work, years they often did not need to sell. Let's make it real. Say you're 45, married, household income around $200,000. You've already built serious momentum and have about $1.2 million saved. You want to retire at 55. You estimate retirement spending at around $140,000 a year. Not a crazy number. Good life, not absurd life. If you keep saving, keep investing, and let compounding work for another decade, your total may land far closer to workable than you think. Then, at retirement, instead of treating everything as one pot, you split it. One part becomes the bridge. The other keeps compounding for later. Social Security arrives down the line and permanently reduces portfolio pressure. And suddenly, what looked impossible under lazy one giant number thinking becomes straightforward under a proper structure. That is why so many people are lost. They are not always missing money. They are missing architecture. Now let me show you the human side of this. There's a guy in every retirement forum. You've seen him. He hit 3 million and moved the target to 5. He hit 5 and moved it to 8. Then healthcare scared him, so now it's 12. His actual spending is modest. His life is already stable. His gauge has been green for years, but he keeps pumping. Why? Because the problem is no longer math. It's psychology. This is what happens when money turns into emotional armor. Every new level becomes the new baseline. The brain adapts. The old target stops feeling safe. So you create a new one, then another one, and another one. Not because the machine needs more pressure, because the feeling of certainty never arrives. And it never arrives because the number was never the real issue. The real issue was always vaguer and more uncomfortable. What do you actually want your life to look like? That is the question most people avoid by chasing a larger portfolio. A bigger number lets you postpone the harder question. What am I retiring to? What would I do with my mornings? What actually matters to me if work stops organizing my identity? A lot of people are not chasing freedom. They are using accumulation to delay self-confrontation. And that delay is expensive. Because here's what the wrong retirement number actually costs. If your real target is 4 million and you hit it at 60, but you believe you need 8 million, you may keep working another 5, 6, maybe 8 years. Those are not random years. Those are likely the healthiest retirement years you will ever have. Your strongest travel years, your highest energy years, your clearest years, your most mobile years. You do not get those back later. You cannot store them. You cannot defer them and withdraw them at 78. If you trade those years for a number that was inflated by bad framing, bad math, or someone else's incentives, that is not a philosophical mistake. That is a concrete loss. Now here are the 3 practical steps. First, calculate your real monthly burn. Not from memory, not from vibes. Pull the last 6 months of statements. Every bank account, every card, every subscription, every recurring payment, everything. Your retirement number starts there, not with a round number from somebody's thumbnail. Second, pull your real Social Security estimate. Your real one. Not a national average, not a guess, not probably around. Your actual projected benefit matters enormously. For some households, that one number cuts the required portfolio by a huge amount. Third, if early retirement is on the table, stop modeling the whole portfolio like one eternal machine. Use the 2-tank framework. Bridge money and long-term money are doing different jobs. Treat them differently. That one shift alone can bring the number in your head back into reality. And that brings me to the core idea of this entire video. You do not need to feel infinitely safe. You need to know when the machine is already functioning properly. That's it. That's the whole art of retirement planning. Not pumping forever. Not chasing bigger for the sake of bigger. Not letting a fear-based industry convince you that green is still red. Just knowing where the real green zone begins. For your life, your spend, your timeline, your structure. And having the courage to stop. Because once the gauge is in the green, every extra year of work needs to justify itself. And for a lot of people, it can't. Not honestly. Not when the math is run correctly. Not when Social Security is modeled properly. Not when spending is based on reality. Not when the number in your head finally gets replaced by one that came from your actual life. And that is the shift most people never make. They keep pumping. The machine keeps running. The dial stopped mattering years ago. And they still can't walk away. Because nobody gets paid to tell you the most liberating sentence in personal finance. You might already have enough.